Story 1. Once, I was sitting outside with a friend when he saw a little beetle on its back, waving its legs in the air. He grabbed a leaf and turned it right side up. Story 2. His place is 15 minutes from mine. He always, without fail, gave me something to eat, like a fruit or snack, for the drive back. Story 3. This actually happened to me last week. On a 10-hour flight back to the United States, there were 2 empty seats between me and an Italian man who didn't speak any English. After trying to get comfortable, we made eye contact, and he motioned for me to lie down on the empty seats between us. Trying to be polite, I declined, but eventually I caved and lay down. I was so exhausted. My airline blanket was only big enough to cover my legs, so I crossed my arms to keep warm. The Italian man took his blanket and draped it over me. I wanted to cry. It was the sweetest thing a stranger has done for me. Story 4. I am unsure if it was truly small, but he put genuine effort into providing thoughtful support and advice to a mutual friend who had requested it. At that moment, my perception of him shifted from thinking he was nice but that it was good he was often busy, to realizing I couldn't get enough of his company and deciding to make him a priority. Story 5. Showing integrity and respect towards a random person they do not know and will never see again. Story 6. He brought one of his dog's toys as a gift for my dog, who had died the year before. He had a small area in his apartment for her belongings. She was his best friend. When I saw him pull it out, my heart sank. My dog still loves that toy and keeps it in his bed. I think about that gesture often and how much it meant to both of us. Story 7. I went to a wedding with my then-girlfriend. I was on call that weekend, so I did not drink, but she had a few too many. I helped her into the passenger seat, shut the door, and got into the driver's seat. She said to me drunkenly, "You know what? We're going to get married. I knew you were the one since you first spoke to me. Okay?" I responded with, "Okay." Then we talked about my nice shoulders. This was like our 6th date. The next time I spoke to her, I hinted at whether she remembered the car ride home. Did I complain about my job? "Oh, I'm so sorry. It must have bored you." My shoulders, and I did marry her about 2 years later. Story 8. Manners are important, especially for a man with good manners. It's not always the big gestures. Even simple acts like holding or opening the door, being polite to staff in stores, saying please and thank you, and being aware of others can make a significant impact. Story 9. My husband goes out of his way to pick up the cat at any time, and he fully settles her so her little front legs hang down over his arm like a jaguar in a tree. She looks so cute and comfortable, and he just pets and loves her, all while claiming he hates cats. They are adorable together, and I love witnessing his genuine affection for her, even if every word out of his mouth is a lie. Story 10. My boyfriend and I were taking a flight for our first trip together early in our relationship. While going through airport security, I observed him assisting a distressed woman struggling with an infant. His awareness of her struggle, empathy for her situation, and the way he helped her made him truly stand out. He is now the father of my toddler, and we are expecting another one soon. Story 11. My friend guided me into a coffee shop by gently placing his hand at the small of my back. That simple gesture instantly endeared him to me. My feelings toward him changed in an instant. We have been married for 42 years. Story 12. My husband needed to sharpen a knife but didn't have his tools. He went outside, grabbed a rock, and sharpened it with that. It was a real primal moment, and I wanted to climb him like a tree. Story 13. I once looked at a pot I was using for rice and grabbed the correct lid after glancing at the pile of lids we had in the cabinet. She told me it was hot. Story 14. My boyfriend and I had only been together for a few months when I was invited to his brother's wedding. I wore a long blue gown, which I felt was overdressed. We had to take the stairs to get to the upstairs venue. The dress was long, but I didn't struggle in it. As we walked up the stairs, he held the train of the dress. I knew I had found someone special, and we are still together 8 years later. Story 15. He showed me kindness and I fell hard. He shared his food with me, opened things for me, encouraged my self-confidence, and generally made me smile when we were together. I didn't think much of him when we first met, but after all that, he became the most beautiful person I had ever seen. I'm not sure I'll ever feel that way about someone again. Story 16. She was very dedicated to helping me make good decisions on something she was knowledgeable about. Then she repaired my phone to make it work again. Story 17. It happened at the beginning when I moved to Germany, not knowing the language and not knowing anyone. Everyone in my class laughed at me for not knowing the language. She was the only one who was nice to me and helped me instead of laughing at me. Story 18. My ex took himself very seriously and couldn't bear to do anything that might make him look foolish. When I met my current partner, his daughter was 5 years old, and he would do all sorts of goofy things to make her laugh. Funny dances, silly faces, making up nonsense songs, animal impressions. Anything to bring her joy. I noticed his willingness to set aside self-consciousness to make his little girl giggle, and it endeared him to me. Story 19. We were walking home from the bar late when a homeless man approached our group to ask for money. Nobody said anything for a moment. We just looked at him. Then one of my friends walked up to the man, introduced himself, and shook his hand. It was one of the most admirable and attractive things I have seen, recognizing the humanity in a man down on his luck and taking the time to introduce himself. I believe he gave him a few dollars after chatting for a few minutes. Another example is noticing a different man who would always show up. He was at every rehearsal, funeral, or party, and he was there to help someone move. If he said he would be there, he was there. You could see that he genuinely cared for his community, and the way he showed it was by being present for them. Story 20. A long time ago, I was making out with a girl who would eventually become my girlfriend. I asked her to take off her sweater, and she replied that she wasn't going to do that because she wasn't feeling hot. I really loved her sassy response. Story 21. I never found my best friend attractive at all until I saw them with wet hair. That awakened something. Story 22. At college, I was part of a large group of friends. Some of them were not English and spoke other languages, which is relevant to my story. As often happens with larger groups, there were many different dynamics, personalities, and rivalries. I was always drawn to one guy because he was kind to me and made an effort to connect with me more than the others. He had a friend who shared his nationality and spoke the same language. I was never fond of this friend because I felt he looked down on me, but I never mentioned it to anyone since I didn't want to speak negatively about him within his own community. They had known him longer than they had known me. Anyway, during a night out with them, I got really drunk and did some silly things, nothing major, just typical teenage behavior. The guy I got along with walked me home. When I returned to college the following Monday, I had a full day of lessons. At lunch, I bumped into a girl from the group who told me that the friend I didn't like had spoken about me during class. He called me names and claimed that I couldn't handle my drink. The guy I got along with started shouting at him in their language and had to be held back from hitting him. A nice man is always good, but a man who will fight for me is on another level. Story 23. Stopped me after I interrupted someone. Let them finish, then asked me what I had been about to say. Simple kindness was so attractive that I married him. Story 24. I have one male coworker in my office who always picks up orders and carries heavy supplies. One day, he offered to run to the store to get a sandwich for a coworker who was complaining that she didn't even have time to eat. It's someone who doesn't even like him and badmouths him whenever she gets the chance. So I asked him why he was going out of his way to do something nice for someone who clearly doesn't appreciate him. His answer floored me. Because a real man takes care of the people around him, regardless of whether he is friends with them or not. I definitely stopped seeing him as simply a doormat. Story 25. Being honest and candid is important. When asked how one is doing or what they like, providing genuine answers instead of generic responses and being vulnerable to share real information creates incredible energy. Story 26. Not necessarily small or more attractive, but when people donate their time and money to help the less fortunate, such as the homeless and starving, it shows they have a big heart and empathy for those in need, as I do. Story 27. My car wouldn't start one day when I was supposed to meet a couple of coworkers for a hiring committee interview. I messaged the group chat to let them know I wouldn't be able to make it due to car trouble. And one of the guys replied almost immediately asking if I needed help or a ride. I already thought he was attractive, and when he does caring things like that, it makes him even more appealing. Story 28. They left my fries alone. You don't know how refreshing this is for me. I dislike it when someone touches my food. Story 29. This is from my wife. When I barely knew her, 2 to 3 hours in, we were walking, and her shoelaces came undone. She didn't notice it, so I suddenly knelt down and tied her shoe. She still talks about it decades later. Story 30. We were about 18 and had been dating for around a year. I took him to meet my great-grandmother, who was almost 90, very unwell, and mostly moved between her bed and her chair in the lounge. After an hour or so, we started talking about our relationship and the idea of getting married one day in the future. My grandmother said she probably wouldn't be able to be there because she was too old. He told her that was okay. We could have the wedding in her lounge so she wouldn't need to move from her chair. We have been together for almost 9 years now and are getting married next year. My grandmother passed away a few years ago, and I really wish she had been able to see it. But I truly love this man. Story 31. When I first started dating my now husband, I got my period at his house for the first time, and he already had a pack of the correct size and brand of tampons waiting under the sink for me. He never asked what kind I used, and we never discussed him getting me tampons. He simply noted the brand in my bathroom and bought some extras on his own. It was a small gesture that made a huge impact. Story 32. I'm not sure if this counts, but I was at Subway and a girl was working on an online order. She was reading through the ticket and started nodding her head back and forth in a, "Yeah, I read that part already," kind of way. I thought it was really cute. The reason I'm uncertain is that I had a massive crush on her before that. She probably could have committed a crime in front of me, and I would have still thought it was cute. Story 33. She showed up and said she was going to do something. She took a huge chance and did what she promised. It made me feel something, but I never told her. Story 34. Hung up my coat for me and was polite to the food service worker on our first date. The bar is low, but these little gestures made a significant difference. Story 35. He began a conversation with an elderly woman while we were eating at the bar and paid for her meal. Story 36. In medical school, we were let go for the day, and she returned on her own time to help an immigrant family understand the menu with her limited bilingual skills. She didn't tell anyone. She just slipped back in quietly. If I hadn't left a bag and caught a glimpse, no one would have even known. Story 37. When we are out shopping, my partner will always stop and offer to help someone if they are struggling to reach an item on a shelf. It is a small gesture, but it has always seemed very kind and considerate to me. Story 38. He made me dinner for our first date, something unheard of in the 1980s. 36 years later, he still makes me dinner almost every night. Story 39. Initiating eye contact with a smile can really elevate my day from a 3 to a 7 instantly. A look and a smile are all it takes. Story 40. On our first date, my husband was quite talkative because he was nervous. This incredibly handsome man was nervous because of my awkwardness. That was endearing. He also wasn't afraid to be silly. It didn't matter what others thought. After 17 years of marriage, I am still head over heels. Story 41. I was talking about random topics, as I am autistic and love random facts. I mentioned a rare disease and admitted that I didn't know how it worked. He then proceeded to explain it in detail effortlessly. The way he explained it made me realize how intelligent he was, and I found it incredibly appealing. I had never considered him strikingly attractive before, but in that moment, I was willing to take off my purity ring. Intelligence is my greatest weakness. Story 42. I know the conversation got off track, but you were in the middle of telling a story. Can I hear the rest? I fell for him quickly and deeply. No one had ever made me feel understood that way. Story 43. When someone truly listens, like when you are talking about random topics and they remember little details, I feel seen and known for this. Story 44. Being incredibly nice and gentle with animals. He is surrounded by cats wherever he goes. His own cat would do anything for him. Mine absolutely adore him, and strays walk around him in circles. He loves them so much as well. Story 45. On an early hike with my partner, he stopped to pick up litter on the trail. It wasn't showy or performative. He simply likes to leave the world better than he found it. It was very endearing. Story 46. I find men more attractive when they floss and care about their health and hygiene in general. There are many sloppy men out there. Story 47. I am a quiet person, and what's worse is that I can't speak loudly even if I try. Once, I was in a group trying to say something, but people didn't notice. However, one of the girls asked everyone to stop talking and listen to what I was trying to say. That was such a nice gesture. We have been friends since then. Story 48. I went on holiday to Portugal with some friends, and one of my male friends offered to carry my heavy suitcase for me. I appreciated the gesture. I had another guy friend there too, but he didn't offer. He just carried it all the way to our accommodation. I don't know why that made me feel attracted to him in that moment. Perhaps it's because, in my culture, men traditionally court through acts of service. It made me realize how rare such gestures are in my dating life, which made me have a crush on him. Story 49. Reached across the table while we were eating at a restaurant, took a fry off my plate, winked, and then ate it while looking me directly in the eye. Story 50. The first morning I stayed at his place, he asked me what I wanted for breakfast. I asked if he knew how to make biscuits and gravy, but he did not. I told him not to worry about it and fell back asleep. He woke me up about an hour later with biscuits and gravy in bed. We're engaged now. Story 51. It is interesting how most of the observations are from women, indicating that they remember these details so accurately even after many years. Story 52. I was on a hike with my girlfriend. It was steep, cold, and wet, and I was focused on getting through it. However, she noticed a baby bird off to the side of the trail. Without hesitation, she backtracked, gently picked it up, and helped it warm up and move again. I had already fallen in love with her by then, but that moment made me love her even more. It's a memory I will always treasure. Story 53. In 2019, about a year before we started dating, my partner bought me extra cheese on my pizza during a group order while we were hanging out with others. We were only vaguely friends at the time, but I have never forgotten that moment. I occasionally bring it up as a reason for loving him, and we share a laugh. Story 54. I was walking with someone, and we were crossing the street. Without thinking, they gently placed their hand on the small of my back. Not possessive or strange, just protective and natural. It was a tiny gesture, but it made me feel seen and safe. I remember thinking this might be something. Story 55. This was in the early 2000s. I was at a bar talking with a cute girl when she reached into her cleavage and pulled out her cell phone. I don't know why, but that small act made me instantly more attracted to her. Story 56. When someone gently brushed lint off my shoulder without a word, their quiet care made them instantly more attractive to me. Story 57. He genuinely helped, not as if it were his job or for pay, but simply because he wanted to help. Story 58. He was a complete stranger but wanted to talk to me. He introduced himself by stating his full name, where he worked, and which college he attended. This made it easy to look him up and find his social media profiles. He wanted my attention and contact information but was considerate of my comfort, making it easy for me to vet him and feel safer about sharing my number and social media. I admire men with good social skills who show genuine consideration for how it might feel to be a woman being pursued. Story 59. My ex and I were working in a sandwich shop that required one person on building duty and one at the till. Once built, the builder would convey the name of the sandwich to the cashier. During our first shift together, we hadn't really spoken much. We received a difficult customer who ignored her, just barked an order, and looked away. She finished it in record time and handed it to me with the curt announcement of steak and arrogance. I missed that. Story 60. He bought me a new brake light for the rear of my car. He never mentioned it. He just showed up one day and gave it to me. He blushed when I hugged him. Story 61. On a hot summer day, I saw a man buying a bottle of water to give to a homeless person. Kindness is attractive. Story 62. I don't know why I swooned so hard for this. My husband and I have very different tastes in music. He came with me to a Regina Spektor concert wearing a pop-punk band t-shirt. One of the workers said to him, "Wow, you really like all different types of music." Instead of saying something like, "My wife's a fan," or "I'm just here with my wife," he replied, "Yeah, man, it's the spice of life. Granted, I'm pregnant and very hormonal, but it was so attractive." Story 63. My boyfriend, on our first date, noticed that my feet didn't really touch the chair rest. I'm short and we were at a high-top bar. I kept hitting his boots and apologizing. After the second time, he said, "There's no need to apologize. I noticed that your feet are dangling, and it must hurt your legs and be uncomfortable. You can rest them on my boots if you would like. I put them there so you can reach." It was the sweetest thing in that moment, and every day for 4 years now, he still gives me sweet moments. He has given me a romantic scavenger hunt, turned on the seat warmer when I have cramps, bought my feminine products and snacks, and so many more things. I am literally no longer attracted to anyone else, not even actors. So crazy, even to me. Story 64. A person noticed I was trying to suppress my coughs to avoid disturbing the other passengers, as I was running a fever and couldn't speak due to my swollen throat. He kindly gave me a vitamin C mix for coughs and said, "When you reach the train station, just ask for hot water, mix it, and drink it. It will help you feel better." It instantly made my day. Story 65. I invited him to a bar, saying I would buy him a drink. He actually let me buy him one and then offered to get the next round. We traded the whole night. It sounds simple, but I have been around too many men who refuse to let a woman buy them anything. Story 66. Someone who recognizes when I am going out of my way and shows kindness to me. If I give someone special treatment, I would also like special treatment in return. Story 67. My husband doesn't like many people and can be very blunt and rude at times. However, when he is near an elderly person, he becomes the sweetest man and does everything he can to make them comfortable. Story 68. I have borderline personality disorder, so I am hypersensitive. However, the girl I have been talking to for a few months is very understanding. She takes the time to listen when I try to explain my feelings, and she never downplays them. We have healthy communication, and we both share our perspectives without accusing each other. I love her so much. I want to marry her. Story 69. In line for food at college, a guy from one of my classes was working. Someone behind me said to him, "Hey, Mikey, what did you do over break?" "I went to Fillings with the ladies." He spoke with a Boston Irish accent. Fillings was a women's discount clothing store. The ladies? His little sisters. Story 70. Had lunch with a girl and she didn't look at her phone once. It was a small moment, but it felt significant. Story 71. He was skateboarding next to me while biking, bringing me home after our first date. On the way back, he saw a mother duck trying to cross the busy road with her line of ducklings. The mother moved quickly, but the ducklings couldn't keep up, and traffic was still flowing. He selflessly dashed into the middle of the traffic to stop the vehicles so the ducklings could safely cross to their mother. I was very impressed by him the next day. Story 72. I tried cooking for my husband and ended up burning down the kitchen. The first thing he asked, even after seeing the damaged counters, the smell of burnt meat, and the smoke, was to hug me and say, "I bet that was scary." Story 73. I was on a second date a few weeks ago, and we ordered a bottle of wine that the bartender personally loved and talked about. When the bartender finished, a woman sitting alone a few bar stools away expressed her curiosity about the wine we ordered, and my date immediately offered her a glass from our bottle. Story 74. My neighbor came back from a walk with his dog while I was heading out to do laundry. Instead of saying hello as he usually does, he said good morning to me. Story 75. I was waiting for the elevator at work, carrying something to the business center. A coworker and their supervisor arrived and exited to their office. The coworker first scanned his badge and selected the floor I needed, so I didn't have to juggle. Story 76. We were at a pool, and he dunked me in the water. Since we were standing pretty close, when I got out of the water, my bikini rolled up because I slid over his body. It was a bit chilly. Story 77. Honestly, something as simple as holding the door open for me or giving a genuine compliment without any agenda can be surprisingly attractive. It is those small, thoughtful gestures that show someone cares about others and is not just focused on themselves. Story 78. I recently started seeing someone. They were making me dinner and asked if the sound of metal scraping on metal would bother me because they needed to sharpen their knives. This little act of care made my heart flutter. Story 79. There was a time when someone held the door open for me in a way that wasn't awkward or forced. They smiled and waited as if it was the most natural thing in the world. Created a relaxed atmosphere, and honestly, it made them seem more attractive. It's amazing how little gestures can make a big impression. Story 80. He made me a sandwich on his cast iron skillet and explained all the ingredients and why he chose them. Then he served it to me nicely. I almost cried. I didn't know men like this existed. It's sad, right? Not one man in my family has ever done that. Story 81. Every time I am sick or injured, my husband takes care of me. This is my biggest turn on. After both of our children were born, he did everything for me in the hospital. He dressed me, showered me, changed my pad, and fed me. This level of love is so authentic. I recently had shingles, which were incredibly painful, and for a week they didn't know what was wrong with me. He took care of the children in the house, took me to the emergency room in urgent care, made sure I was fed, and spoke to the doctors about pain medication when the regular stuff wasn't working. Every time, I feel like I fall in love all over again. I don't know what it is. Story 82. I was staying over at the guy I was dating for the first time, and in the morning when I was putting on my bra, a strap broke. He disappeared for a minute and returned with thread and a needle to stitch it back together. Story 83. Basically, it's about paying attention and being present while making connections and helping people feel valued. Story 84. He noticed I had finished eating, as I am a slow eater and he had been done for a while. He got up, grabbed me a box, and proceeded to put my leftovers into it. Then, he carried it out to the car and opened my door for me, even in the rain. He is so thoughtful and caring. I will marry this man. Story 85. I went on a trip with my partner. The tour guide was kind and attentive to me, even more than to my partner. After a few days, I couldn't look him in the eye. My subconscious recognized something was off before I admitted it to myself. I was feeling down when we left that country. Story 86. We were in Target when a short woman appeared around the corner and said, "Mind if I borrow him to get something off the top shelf?" He, of course, went to help. I was a puddle. Story 87. I brought home a male suitor recently, and he ended up getting out of bed and making himself comfortable in my living room. I was fine with this but was somewhat dreading seeing him, so I lingered in bed for another hour, and he still didn't leave. Eventually, I got up and saw him. He had made coffee and folded the blankets on my couch. He said, "I am so sorry. I didn't mean to overstay my welcome, but I didn't have a way to lock your front door if I left, and I didn't want to wake you." Honestly, it was the sweetest sentiment that I hadn't even considered, and it instantly made him more attractive to me. Story 88. I overheard a man behind me on the bus asking two kids if this was their stop and where they were supposed to get off. They replied that they were going to the end station. In front of them sat their dad, who joined the conversation, but not in an angry way. The man thought the two young kids were alone on the bus and wanted to ensure they got off at the right stop. Story 89. Before my wife and I were dating, we would take breaks at the same time as we worked nearby. She would change her glasses before going back to work and click her sunglasses into their carrier. It drove me insane. It was so hot for some reason. Story 90. A guy said it was okay if I didn't want to sleep with him on the first, second, or third date. It made me want to go home with him right then and there. I don't know why. Story 91. I didn't realize it until recently, but people who possess subtle internal confidence to do things others won't, and who don't care what others think about them are not afraid to try new things. Story 92. My partner got along well with my younger brothers when they first met. At the time, my youngest brother was 8 years old, and he loved playing with my partner. One day, we were at the park, and I was taking pictures of my partner when my brother decided to jump on his back. I have 3 pictures showing the moment, and they both had huge smiles. You could tell they were having a great time. I also love how my partner is great with animals. It's heartwarming to see him dote on my dog and cat. I have a video of him playing his mandolin and singing to my dog while she gives him her usual bug-eyed, "Give me attention" look. It's the cutest thing ever. Another time, when it was snowing, I returned inside from walking her, and he immediately took her and zipped up his hoodie around her to keep her warm. Story 93. A simple conversation about life, where my opinions are listened to attentively and discussed with me, would attract me to anyone who provides the attention I seek. Story 94. My husband told me when we were first dating that his daughter, my stepdaughter, would always come before me. This showed me so much about who he is as a person. Story 95. He gave his disabled brother his last $20 so he could go to dinner with friends while he was picking me up for a date. I ended up marrying him. Story 96. A man held the door open for me. I am pregnant and carrying a toddler. We locked eyes, and he waited for me while keeping the door open. I could tell he was on his way to work, so thank you for helping an exhausted mother. Story 97. My husband pulled over to pick up the American flag from someone's yard, rolled it up, and placed it against their front porch. Story 98. When a guy I was dating held me for the first time and said, "Oh my God." Of course, I was feeling it too. Story 99. I am genuinely excited about various things. As a verbal person, I cannot help but express my enthusiasm. It makes it even better when others share my energy. Story 100. We were walking late at night when he switched places with me, saying he wanted to ensure my safety in case a car came by. It would hit him instead because he was closer to the road. Story 101. Tap my shoulder. That sounds really silly, but he usually taps my shoulder to get my attention before he makes a joke. Alternatively, he taps my shoulder and appears on the other side. It's cute, even though we aren't that close. Story 102. Said something very intelligent in class, connecting a reading to a larger idea. Yes, I am a nerd. Story 103. A girl admitted to hitting me in middle school. I struggle with honesty. I had a crush on her for 2 years. We spent time at her house a couple of times. I tried to make her laugh whenever I could. She was older, so I knew it wasn't going anywhere, but it still made me happy. Story 104. My boyfriend solves many of my problems even without me asking. They can be small nuisances or significant hurdles, but he always has my back and my best interest at heart. I am truly lucky. Story 105. Someone talked to me. It was the first time I experienced a stimulating conversation in real life. I often hear people say that I am unapproachable, so for someone to engage with me in such a meaningful way was very attractive. Story 106. My husband and I were eating at a restaurant when a young boy came in and ordered food at the counter, pulling out a handful of change. The waiter asked the boy to step aside so my husband could pay while he counted his change. My husband ended up paying for the boy's meal without telling him. I had no idea until we got to the car and he told me. Story 107. Remembering small details. Showing good manners. Holding the door open for me. Communicating clearly. Sending sweet good morning and good night messages. It's never about the big things. It's the small, thoughtful gestures in everyday life. Story 108. When my boyfriend came to see me on our second date, he greeted me by saying, "Hey, it's really great to see you." He was so smiley and genuine, and my heart melted. Story 109. I was lying on the couch of a guy I had been seeing. I asked him to toss me the blanket as he walked to the kitchen. He stopped what he was doing and not only brought me the blanket, but also tucked me in. I was pleasantly surprised and blown away, as my ex used to treat me horribly, and I had forgotten what soft gestures felt like. Story 110. On our first date in my apartment, one of my cats urinated on my boyfriend. He did not get upset. He just shouted, "Your cat peed on me." and then laughed in the most exhilarated way I have ever heard. That was 11 years ago. Story 111. When I was dating my husband, we did a lot of hiking, and he would pick up little pieces of trash he found along the way. This won me over. Story 112. I jokingly asked which perfume he was wearing. He sent me a photo and recommended places to buy it. Story 113. If you're interested, this happens in the Henry James novelette In the Cage. The unnamed protagonist is engaged to a nice guy out of convenience, even though she's not really attracted to him. While taking her on a tour of their future house, he shows her what will be her mother's room. That's when she realizes he had planned all along, without any discussion, for housing and caring for her mother as he envisioned their future. She is so touched that she finds this even more impressive than the time he collared a drunken sailor who came into their shop and threw him out. Story 114. Making me walk on the inner side of the sidewalk instead of the outer side to protect me from the street and guiding me through narrow spaces. Always making me feel safe. Story 115. I was friends with this girl. Actually, we are still friends. We just don't see or talk to each other as much. She was simply a friend. Then one day we were going to have dinner, nothing special. She texted me that day and told me she wanted to go to a specific place to eat and asked me to join her. When I went to pick her up, she had styled her hair differently than she normally did, and I instantly became physically attracted to her. It was strange because it was almost like she was a different person to me. I did not want to ruin our friendship, but I also started trying to avoid her, which doesn't make sense. Almost a year into trying to not be around her or communicate with her as much, she started dating someone. But it was just that one small thing she did that changed how I felt about her. 15 years later, I still wonder what could have been if I had tried to pursue a relationship with her. Story 116. He always walks on the side closest to the road when we go for a walk. He also cuts my pear in half for me because he noticed it is easier for me to eat that way. Additionally, he makes me tea. Story 117. My ex always made sure I was comfortable around him and encouraged me to speak up if anything bothered me. He wanted me to let him know freely if I wasn't okay with something he did. This may seem trivial, but I never encountered this with any other guy. Quite the opposite. I often found that others would get defensive if I expressed that my needs weren't being met. Story 118. They remembered something small I mentioned in passing, a random snack I liked, and surprised me with it a week later. It wasn't the snack. It was the fact that they listened and cared enough to remember. It made my heart melt. Story 119. My now fiancé asked me on our first date if he could put his hand on my knee after 2 hours of talking. Then he just rested it there after I said yes, and we continued talking for 3 more hours like that. I still feel warm thinking about that moment. Story 120. A man I dated last year asked me which perfume was my favorite from my collection. During our first date, while talking about favorite fragrances, he mentioned the base notes of the perfume I love. He looked up my French perfume and read about its base and middle notes. That was a major turn-on and incredibly sexy. Story 121. My girlfriend was always kind to waitstaff at restaurants when we started dating. It shows that you are a good person, have good manners, and were raised well. We have been together for 3 years now. Story 122. Haircut. My husband had a 1990s-era Hugh Grant floppy haircut in college. When he cut his hair shorter, I definitely noticed. Story 123. In high school, I tripped going up the stairs, and the studious guy who rushed to help me with my books became the most appealing person to me. Story 124. He talked to someone from another country and had them repeat their name multiple times, trying to get it right. He ended up treating me poorly when he no longer needed me, but at that time I felt proud to know him. Story 125. Once I was eating with a plastic knife and fork with my ex, and you know how plastic knives are, I was struggling. Then I answered my phone and wasn't paying attention to what he was doing. When I returned to eating, my food was cut into small pieces so I could easily eat it with my fork. He wasn't that great, but I went back to him a couple of times just remembering this. Story 126. Anytime someone feels even a little awkward, it is much more realistic. I don't relate to people who are always cool and comfortable in public. Story 127. Cutting up the plastic six-pack holder before disposing of it helps prevent wildlife from becoming ensnared. Story 128. Every night, my partner walks into our son's room, checks on him, and recovers him with his blankets. This warms my heart, and I love watching him do this. Story 129. I had a cold once at my previous workplace and couldn't find a tissue anywhere. A coworker, with whom I had recently started working, searched for a box of tissues and brought me one. I will always remember that. It was a kind and unexpected gesture. I guess I'm just not used to experiencing random acts of kindness these days. He's also a pediatrician and one of the best I've had the honor to work with. He truly cares about his young patients. Thank you, Dr. B. You are a kind man, and the world needs more people like you. Story 130. I'll basically melt and develop an instant crush on any man who shows me any measure of kindness. It's kind of a problem. Story 131. My ex-partner cleared a patch of sand at the beach of bees so my daughter with anaphylaxis could play safely at the water's edge. He kept combing that section of sand back and forth until he was satisfied he had removed them all. It was one of the most beautiful gestures anyone has ever done for me. Story 132. I still won't forget this gesture. I was on a date, and my companion noticed that I tended to fiddle with my hands and pick at my nails a lot, probably due to first date nerves. We had gotten coffee, and they kindly gave me their coffee cup to hold. It was a simple act but incredibly thoughtful and observant of them. Story 133. My brother was acting wild and took candy from a sales table before I could stop him. I felt bad and embarrassed. The man managing the booth appeared calm and unfazed, with no signs of being offended or uncomfortable. I instantly felt attracted to that salesman. Story 134. They repeated something I had casually said a long time ago, which showed me that they actually listened when I spoke. Something so small, yet so significant. Story 135. My manager, whom I already had a huge crush on, jokingly told me to be quiet. For some reason, his tone and dry humor really attracted me. Story 136. He wrote a grammatically correct, well-punctuated, eloquent, and thoughtful letter to the hotel where I booked my stay, and I was truly impressed. Story 137. After a significant surgery, I came home and no longer had high-seated toilets. It was agonizing pain trying to get up and down without any bars to help push myself off the toilet. Without hesitation, my husband left me with my dad and went to 3 drugstores searching for elevated toilet seats. It seems silly looking back on it, but it meant the world to me that there were no questions, no dismissive comments. He simply took care of me. Story 138. My partner resting their knee against mine during social situations, especially when getting to know his family in the early days of our relationship, felt a little daunting. It shows he is there for me and supportive without needing to say a word. Story 139. My 15-year-old dog passed away, and I texted a friend from Twitter to share my sadness. He responded with a quote from The Lord of the Rings. Death is just another path, one that we all must take. It took just a few seconds of his time to reach out, and I fell head over heels for him immediately. To be honest, I was already in love with him, but that moment solidified my feelings. We've been married for 7 years and together for 12. He's the best person I know. Story 140. He shared a song he loved that was new to me in our early days. He was vulnerable, and I recognized his beautiful soul. Thank you. Story 141. Early in my relationship with my wife, we were walking by Lake Michigan when we came across a duck that was choking on a piece of bread. Without hesitation, she picked up the duck and tried to eject the bread from its mouth, despite not knowing anything about a duck's anatomy. Ultimately, she was successful and fell to her knees, crying tears of relief that the duck would live because of her effort. It made me happy to see her succeed and confirmed what a beautiful soul she has. Story 142. During winter, while I got ready for bed in the bathroom, he would lie on my side of the bed so that when I came out and got into bed, my side would be warmed up. Story 143. First of all, I know exactly how this is going to sound. My boyfriend would visit me at work. Sometimes he would even bring his daughter. My previous boyfriend was emotionally and psychologically manipulative. He would drive by my job twice a day for over 6 months before we moved in together and never stopped. I would call him, crying and begging him to stop and see me on his way home because I was having a terrible day and hadn't seen him in weeks. I wasn't allowed at his place, and he refused to make the 30-minute drive to where I lived. He would always say, "It's on the other side of the street, and the light takes too long," or "I'm too tired. I work today too," or "I don't want to have to sit there and wait for you to come outside for 5 minutes. This man worked at a dispensary and would tell me, "I worked 10 hours today and only saw 8 patients, so my coworker and I watched 4 movies today. I managed a very successful fast casual restaurant, and this guy would come in after his blue-collar shift and sit, sometimes for hours if it was busy, so we could eat together. Even if I had to take a bite, jump up and run to the kitchen, sit down, take a bite, talk for a minute, and then jump up and run to the kitchen repeatedly. Those were the days that made the worst days at that job not so bad. Even when I got transferred literally an hour away, he would still occasionally make the drive to see me for 15 minutes. I stayed with that abusive person for another year and a half before it clicked that I was indeed being abused and paying a grown man's bills every month so he could stay home and play video games all day every day after he lost his job shortly after we got our apartment together while I was working upwards of 80 hours a week. Now, my boyfriend and I have been together for over a year, and we're expecting our first child together. Story 144. I have known this person for a couple of years now. We are good friends, and he is one of the few who has stuck by me while I went through homelessness and became a single parent to a 9-month-old last year. I messaged him to say I might take some time to reply as I need to shower the baby and get him to bed, and he simply said, "Don't rush." His patience with me was a significant emotional attraction. Story 145. I have a friend with a complicated history. He is a veterinarian. I called him to get a second opinion about my bunny's illness. The situation was dire, and I didn't know what to do. He comforted me and advised me on the correct procedure. For context, I am studying veterinary medicine, and we often lose sensitivity regarding these kinds of subjects due to frequent exposure to difficult decisions and deaths. While we normally empathize with pet owners, between veterinarians we tend to be cold and direct. It truly helped me that he provided comfort during such a challenging time. I was instantly grateful. Story 146. My partner used to live on a boat for a few years before I met him. The first time we talked about it, I said, "Oh, the ladies must have loved that." He mentioned that he never brought a girl on the boat because he didn't want to make her uncomfortable, considering she wouldn't know her way around, and he didn't want her to feel trapped with him. He still doesn't understand why that way of thinking is so uniquely considerate. He thinks every guy would think like that. Story 147. Sometimes when we were standing, it was crowded and someone's coffee spilled over near us, but we were a safe distance from it. I was thinking about helping out, but before I could, this guy just grabbed some tissues, bent down and cleaned it up. He's always the first to act in this kind of situation, and it's really attractive. Story 148. She genuinely listened after asking a question, making it feel like she cared about what I had to say, even if it was something simple. Story 149. Laughing with me rather than at me. For example, the person in question never laughs at me if I do something foolish or if I say something self-deprecating. That really means a lot to me. Story 150. Night after, we were showering before breakfast. I was wondering aloud if I should wash my hair because I didn't want to walk to breakfast with icy wet hair. He said, "Or we can just go somewhere indoors so you don't have to do that." It was the straightforwardness with which he said it, that casual kindness, which was incredibly attractive. Story 151. Helping people at the grocery store, whether by grabbing something from a shelf for someone who can't reach it or offering to put a water pack in an elderly person's car so they don't have to lift it. Kindness is important. Story 152. The first time my girlfriend and I hung out was at a mutual friend's house. The friend group was debating a topic, and she shared an incredibly insightful perspective. It was so profound that the table fell silent and effectively ended the debate. I remember admiring her emotional intelligence and feeling envious that I didn't think of it. We don't remember the topic now, but she continues to captivate me every day. She is my best friend, and I can talk to her for hours. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.